Today's episode of Planet Startup Stories puts another emphasis on Planet Startup being a community. Our nonprofit organization is a community of advocates, builders, and doers working, together, or should we say, working together apart, especially during these times, in different levels and in different capacities, coming from multi-sectoral groups in our communities. And we are fortunate to have with us for our podcast episode, Alice Sansonetti. She's one of our student volunteers. Alice here just graduated with a bachelor's in biological sciences with a minor in French from Arizona State University. Alice, welcome to Planet Startup Stories.
Thank you so much.
Planet Startup Volunteers is like all of you are very crucial in terms of how our organization runs things. We value the support that you rendered, the services that you rendered in one way or another, right? And I would love to learn more about your experience working with Planet Startup. So to start off, how did you learn of the Planet Startup volunteer opportunity?
So this past semester, I took a class, a business French class to support my minor. And during that class, we all had the opportunity to do some mainly translation work for Planet Startup. And so that's how it started. Actually introduced by our professor, we were shown the Planet Startup website, and then everything else we just did through our class website, which is just Canvas. So we just worked on documents that were added on our page, Canvas page.
Right. Was this your first volunteer opportunity with a nonprofit organization or an NGO, or did you have any previous volunteer opportunities in the same space?
I actually did, but in a different type of volunteer. I recently did some volunteer work for an animal rescue organization for my actual science major.
Right. How do you like the idea of volunteering? What basically motivates you to volunteer?
Well, that's a great question. Well, for my first volunteer opportunities, which are mainly in animal and conservation and wildlife, that's really what I want to do as a career, possibly. So I really do want to make a difference in the environment, the conservation, but really any type of volunteer is just very fulfilling work, whenever you do something like that. So it was a pleasure being able to help communities that were so far away, like in this case.
Exactly. So you're driven both by your advocacy and this thing about, being able to help others in whatever capacity. All right. So going back to your Planet Startup volunteer experience. So what specific tasks did you do?
Yes, well, our first task was mainly translation. So we were given documents and slideshows that were going to be used to teach people and students that spoke French. So documents were in English, and we were given them, and we worked in teams to translate them from English to French. And for our second task, we were tasked to brainstorm about different marketing or financing ideas for Planet Startup. So my team talked about different types of media outlets or ways to get on social media, network, and get people talking about Planet Startup, building awareness and just spreading the word so that more people could volunteer and work and also take advantage of their services.
For those who are listening, like if you're wondering why like there's a translation component involved here, because majority of our programs, of Planet Startups programs, are in Africa, and some of the communities there, we do the trainings in French. So Alice group, they were translating some documents needed for training. That's part of it. As like you were doing the translation work, You learned about Planet Startups programs, our impact. What can you say about our advocacy?
I thought that this specific type of advocacy was new to me. I'd never seen it before. I think it's something that really gives a long-lasting impact because of skills that you're actually transferring to people. So you're giving people the opportunity of building their own business and being entrepreneurs, which is such a valuable asset in developing communities. So I thought that was a really great way to approach advocacy in this case.
Now, I know that your major is in the sciences, but how is the volunteer experience relevant to your field of study or in like your future career?
It definitely was because, well, my minor being in French, I had done translation work before, but not in French. I done it in Italian actually. So being able to do translation work in almost a professional manner, I think was really important because I mean, I gained, of course, valuable experiences, even in terms of, more technical vocabulary like entrepreneurship. And I mean, that's really a great way to show on my resume my level of French speaking, which, a second or third language is always really, really valuable in any
Yes.
work. So I'm sure that will help for any recruiter.
Do you see yourself doing volunteer work in the same space or in the same industry, same advocacy in the near future?
Mhm. Well, most of my prospects for volunteer work are usually based on conservation biology because that's a big part of the type of field I'm going into, working with NGOs. But conservation being also really focusing on the relationship of local communities and the environment is also
Right.
a really, really big part of conservation. So advocating and working and volunteering around local communities that perhaps are disadvantaged or needing different types of resources, I think could definitely help with conservation as well, and finding better ways for people to use resources in the environment without making it destructive for the environment, I think could actually be a great idea.
Are you looking at entrepreneurship in the near future, or is this something far-fetched from?
Personally, I never thought about it. So my main type of work is probably going to be in research or NGOs in terms of conservation. So personally, not very likely as probably a researcher. But I do know that it is hugely a field that's hugely growing right now.
What value do you think volunteering brings to students?
Well, I think a huge value, just personally, really, even without the schooling, uh, lending your skills to help other people. I think it's always like such a great learning experience, especially because you get to learn and explore new skills that you would not have thought of in your main career path. But also in terms of college admittance and even jobs. I know that many colleges, when you apply for grad school, they do ask about your volunteer experience. And a lot of recruiters and employers also ask about your volunteer experience, and having a good story, having some lesson or some new experiences that you made during volunteering is always really valuable to talk about in those situations.
Any message that you'd want to give out to other students who are planning to volunteer?
Yeah, I would say if you're thinking about it, definitely go for it. It's a great learning experience, gaining a lot of skills that you would not have thought about. It's also a really flexible type of work. If you want to volunteer, you'll have, any type of work you can think of, you can definitely find it, and it'll just be life experience that will stay with you and will have a positive impact, which, I mean, what else could you ask for in this case?
Thank you so much, Alice. Right. Thank you for gracing our show. And to all our podcast listeners, we'll be interviewing more Planet Startup volunteers in the days to come. Thanks again, Alice. Bye, everyone.